So welcome to the Node.js Technical Steering Committee meeting for March 20th, 2021. We'll follow our standard agenda as was posted in the issue in the TSC repo. Before we get started, are there any announcements or things that people would like to share? If nobody else has any, I'll mention that the OpenJS World is the first week of June. We hope to see you there. I know that there have been a number of people in the different, at least I know of a few working groups like the Node API working group, the package maintenance working group, who are busily recording or have recorded sessions for that. So it's a good opportunity to find out a little bit about what's going on in the Node project. If we don't have any other announcements or things to share, we can move on to CPC and board meeting updates. I don't have any updates from the board at this point. The meeting this month was canceled, but again, you know, that's if there's anything that people want me to take to the board between now and the next meeting, just let me know. I can do that. I don't have anything that I know of on the list to do. I know I think Rich, thanks for bringing the update to the TSC charter to the CPC. So in terms of that, I can see there's some reviews going on, and I expect that'll close out within a week or so. I think I'd have to go back to the governance for the CPC, but I think it's like a 2-week cycle or something to do those approvals, so shouldn't be too bad. Any questions on that front or things people want to ask CPC or board-wise before we move on? No? Okay. Well, the next one on our agenda then is the future of the Node HTTP client. And I think, Robert, you were the one who added that to the agenda, right?
That's correct. Let's see, is Matthias here today? No, I know he'd like to be involved in that discussion, but I guess we can.
We can kick it off, and it may be a multi-meeting discussion. So I'd say give everybody some context, and we can get people thinking about it.
The issue here is that we do have an HTTP client in Node Core, and there comes issues into the issue tracker about things we should fix with that back and forth. However, we don't really have that many people that engage with those issues. In the past, it has been a lot of myself and Matteo and Danielle, but all three of us have moved over to work on Undici, which is under the Node.js organization at the moment. As you know, we see this as the future of HTTP clients, at least in Node. And then it's a little bit strange that we have, a client in Node Core that is semi-maintained and has issues, while we're working on a different project, Undici. And per the Node.js documentation, we're still recommending people to use the Node.js core client. And that's kind of a suboptimal situation, so to say. And I guess the question here is, can we do something? Do we want people to move over to Undici? And in that case, how do we move towards that?
What do you want to see happen?
I would, for me personally, I just like it if the Node.js docs just linked to the Undici docs, or even the Undici docs were, merged into the Node.js docs with an appropriate link, and this is how you install it. And then, whether it's inside of Node Core or a NPM package or not, I guess that's a bigger question. But just to have something to start with, we could even have deprecating or not recommending the core client with a link to Undici until we sort this out, because it's a little unfortunate situation now that we have what we believe is a better solution, but we're still indirectly telling people to use the old one that we don't maintain so much, and I don't think that's a good place to be.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Has Undici been tested to be completely equivalent to what is inside Node.js? So could it work for all the use cases that people are using the built-in HTTP client right now?
As far as we know, this is documented in the Undici. If you go, actually, I'll just paste a little link here. Those that are interested here. In the bottom, we have what we don't do. And as far as I know, the only thing that Node Core does that Undici doesn't do is support the, expect header, the expect request header. There is an issue to add support for that, but that's not added yet. Other than that, as far as I know, it should be the same.
So what about like API surface wise? Like could you just, instead of requiring one, could you just require the other and the rest of the code?
API, no, the API is totally different, and that's the point, because the current API, you just can't do it.
Okay, understood. So then this needs to be a sort of community-wide migration effort, right? So
yes.
Okay.
That is correct.
Okay, yeah. Then starting with documentation, I think would be reasonable to just point out the fact that the built-in client is not very well supported anymore, and that people should start undertaking the effort of migrating to Undici.
Yeah.
So is it like, if it was in core, would we consider it stable at this point?
Good question. I don't know. We're just about to release Undici 4. So we have RC4 at the moment. Of course, there are some bugs that we are still solving, but there are bugs in the core client as well.
Sure.
So if I would compare them, I would
feel like, would you, if it was in core, say we said, okay, we're going to develop a second HTTP client in core, would you be like, hey, this should be non-experimental now, or just wondering the level that you'd be advocating for?
I don't think there's enough usage out in the wild yet to, have the non-experimental flag.
Okay.
Because I think that the thing that makes something non-experimental is that you've had a certain amount of use case, people using it without
real
problems,
world.
Real world usage. And I don't think we have that with Undici right now, and we won't have it either for a very long time unless we, try to encourage people to use it.
Right. Okay. So it's like we need more usage to sort of validate, get to like stable recommendation, right?
I would say the current situation we're in is that the current client is deprecated and the future client is experimental.
Not officially, but like effectively is what you're saying, right?
Effectively. Yes.
Right.
Practically, so to say.
I think Ruben has something he wants to say.
Is a tool to migrate pretty much from one to the other, or at least to indicate how you would have to change your current implementation towards Undici to have the same functionality. So if we would build a separate tool and that users could opt in to by just installing, and then it would hook into the current HTTP implementation and tell them how to switch, that might improve the situation and might also improve the or at least lead to a way to at some point maybe switch the default HTTP parser.
I'm not sure about tooling, but we could certainly do more documentation about, this is how you did it before and this is how you should do it now. What I would especially like to see is, our ecosystem modules moving away from using the core client as their, engine and using Undici instead, because that would not affect the end users per se. And It would give us more, usage and feedback.
Absolutely, but even for module authors, it would be a lot easier to switch in case you would have a module that would just tell you what you have to change and in what way.
If that's possible and somebody wants to do it, totally agree with you.
I guess it would not be possible for all use cases, but likely for a lot. And
are you thinking of like some kind of code mod, or?
Sorry?
Are you thinking some kind of code mod, or I'm not quite following what kind of tool you need? Something that parses your code and tells you.
So either we could parse the code and use an AST and just check for that, or we would just see if we could. I'm not certain if we should monkey patch HTTP, and that's probably not a good idea. And to indicate when some specific functionality is how it could be implemented instead with Unity.
Some kind of runtime warnings.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's a little bit too how do we call it? Invasive.
Well, I wouldn't want to have that as a default, but as an opt-in, that you have to install a specific module, so you would have, you want to know about it. That's because as a module author, for example, when I have a code written, it would be a lot easier for me to just know where to switch what by installing that module and then running, for example, the test suite and getting all the different warnings where the library uses HTTP at the moment and what would have to be changed with Unity.
I think
for what it's worth.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, for what it's worth, in Node API, we also have a conversion tool, right? And ours is just based on regular expressions, right? Because we have the benefit of having like something to latch onto, like NaN : right? That kind of thing. And so you just replace that with an API : But what we found was that, I mean, as far as I know, it's not a very super popular tool because obviously it can't do all the work for you. It's not like AI complete, right? But on the other hand, what we do have in Node API is we have this repository of like examples, of how to, like, common use cases for simple tasks that native add-ons have to do. And so I'm wondering if it might make sense to do like a side-by-side sort of library of simple HTTP clients and the most common things that they need to do. And so you'll have a thing where that's actual code that you can run. And
sorry guys, I just got an emergency support call. I have to jump out a little bit. I'll try to get back as soon as possible. Sorry.
Okay,
no worries.
Yeah, I think we're kind of going off, like these are all good ideas. We should probably discuss them in issues, though. I think the concrete ask was, it sounded to me like adding some references in the documentation, and kind of the way I understood it is like that those sections could be, if you're looking at using this HTTP client, by the way, the people who've been focused on this are working on a V2 out in this other repository. It's still earlier work, but we'd recommend you take a look at that. Is kind of what
it's kind of one level below deprecated right now, the HTTP client. It's not officially deprecated, but it's kind of sort of deprecated, right? And so it might make sense to
people are working on something new. So
yeah,
I would anybody have concerns with adding that level of references in the docs?
I would say yeah. The only thing I'd want to see is a blog post, but that already happened. So yeah, I think it's fine. Go ahead, Gabriel.
Yeah. I was just gonna say, like, I think we could explicitly say that although the built-in client is not deprecated, because it isn't, we do recommend that people move to the new one because the maintainers are focused on the new one, and they maintain the old one just sort of sporadically. I think
yeah,
folks
and it's even like how sorry, go ahead.
No, I was pretty much done.
I was just going to be like, we can work on the specific wording, like whether it needs to say recommend or like, it's a good idea to look or whatever, we could work through there. But I'm sure we can come to something which is like helps that. Let's get the next step of more people using it to validate. Because I kind of heard it's like, well, we wouldn't be claiming it's stable yet. but we need help to get there. So, you know, let's put in the first step of here's the, you know, the module, the thing that we'd be suggesting you look at if you want to, you know, think about the future.
Yeah, for sure.
Rich?
No, I was going to just see if any of the people we haven't heard from have anything to add to this topic. I see Tobias put in the chat, I think that would imply that we plan to add another HTTP implementation to core. Oh, and Antoine typed something too.
Right, if we were going to call it legacy.
Status HTTP core module in the docs. Ah, yeah, that can be discussed in the issue tracker, but that's an interesting question.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm not sure, like I'd interpret what they'd said that we would be quite there yet, but it sounds like nobody has objections to us adding something, and we can figure out through the PR what that something will be. Any other things people want to add before we move on to the next issue?
I just want to hear Danielle, Beth's, and Girish's voices before I sign off in 10 minutes.
I'll give a minute here.
I don't have anything on this topic, but maybe on the next one. Okay,
thanks. Okay, we'll move on to the next issue, which is tracking issue, commit queue issues and feedback. This is 34770. I'm not sure who added to the issue. If you're here, just speak up and jump in. Or if you have some thoughts on it, also feel the same while I look for who did. I think Richard added it to the TSC agenda, Richard Lau. I think the reason was it's been broken for quite a while, and in maybe some of the discussion I remember looking at it before is like, we need to say, like, if it's going to be broken, maybe we need to get rid of it, or we need to fix it, one of the two. So I don't know if people have thoughts, have been involved in the discussion.
This is largely worked upon by the build working group?
Not really. The commit queue was done outside of the core people who, you know, are active in the build side of things.
So all Richard added the TSC for was so that someone with maintainer privileges could get the right token, because that's all this is waiting on to be fixed, as I understand it, is the existing GitHub token that they were using. You can read through the issue, but I think they just need a new token. I could be wrong about that. So if someone wants to raise their hand to look into this and take care of it, although it looks like Joy and Mary are both on it, and they should both have the correct privileges, I think.
That's kind of why I was confused on that, yeah.
Oh, Mary's saying the token that they have should work. So yeah, maybe we ought to make a point to, I don't know if I don't think we have the right people here today to talk about this.
Okay, so maybe we should just skip till next time.
Yeah, I don't know how many more weeks we want to leave this broken, but yeah, I think maybe making a point to see if Mary or maybe Joy can be at the meeting next week, and if not, maybe we can try to find some other time or kickstart it some other way if someone wants to take on the action item of doing that. And since I'm verbalizing it, I guess I'm implicitly volunteering to reach out to them. So you can go ahead and do that, and I'll do that tomorrow or something.
Okay. To Mary to better understand what's blocking. Because yeah, I mean, if they know the commit queue the best, and if they've created tokens, I don't know how. Anyway, if you want to follow up with them, that's perfect. Okay. Anything more on that one before we move on?
And I'm back.
Okay. So just to fill you in, like, we closed with the understanding of the concrete ask was to add some sort of reference in the existing documentation. Nobody had any objections to that. You know, and we kind of figured that through the PR, we can agree on what that language should be. It sounded like it wouldn't be like, hey, we've replaced it with this, but it's like, here's something we want you to come out and, you know, use and give us more feedback on so that we can, it's kind of like, I think certainly saying like, hey, most of the core maintainers are focused on this, who've worked on HB are focused on this, think this is the future. So check it out is the very least we could say, right? And then through the PR, we can agree on what more we might want to say.
And that, would break more users, and maybe then we might not consider it experimental anymore, and then we can take a next step.
Exactly, right? Like, nobody voiced any concerns or objections about taking that first step to try and help us move down the path. So.
Yeah, I'll talk with Matteo, and maybe we prepare a PR or something.
Sounds good. Okay, so back to 33.864, we named default branch to master. That's just sort of a tracking issue. I have gone through and done, I opened issues on a bunch of the internationalization ones. So we've converted a bunch of those ones over. I've got another set of issues I opened in a second pass. A few other people, like I've posted some on some other issues. So again, it's just a matter of, as people have time, if we can go through and, communicate, enough with the people who are active in those repos to make sure we're comfortable in changing and then making the change. And I think it seemed to me, actually, a few people said I went ahead and did it. So it may not necessarily just need to be the org owners who can do it. So we can all do this for whatever repos, but it may be that some of the teams can also do this for themselves as well. But I don't have anything beyond like making some slow progress on it. Anything else people want to bring up or discuss?
Danielle is asking if there are instructions listed somewhere to do this. And I believe the answer is yes, but I'm forgetting where. And I know there's some instructions in the GitHub interface, but
yeah,
I think
yes.
someone put together a checklist to like Targus or someone, but I have to find it.
I'm just going to see if that's maybe in the issue. Change it here. Well, actually, this link I'm going to copy. Tierney had pasted in some steps.
Yeah.
So here's the link. It's in that same issue, one of the earlier issues. I'm just wondering if that's the way I'd still recommend to do it.
There's in the GitHub interface, there are like specific commands you run on the command line after you've after you've done the update and everything. But yeah, so
those instructions are actually out of date. Like basically all you need to do. Oops, sorry, I pasted them only to you, Rich, so ignore them anyway. It's like you basically go to the UI, you find there's a place that's branches, and then there's an option to rename a branch. That's all you have to do. It retargets PRs. The only thing it affects is people who have them checked out already, and they basically need to change their branch. They have to start using main instead of master. But existing PRs are still okay, so you don't have to like change your PR. You could still push your PR and that kind of stuff.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I think I remember initially when people started doing this, it was closing PRs when you rename the branch and whatnot. And so I think that GitHub has a better way to handle that now, though. Is there, if somebody already has an open PR against a fork, will they get a notification or something? Or
there's
like
lots
of alert?
There's stuff in the UI. So I don't know that you get an email or anything like that. If you log and you're on the UI, you definitely get a pop-up that says, hey, master's been renamed to main. And I guess I don't think you necessarily, for your open PRs, I think it moves them to main. I think the main thing is that if locally it still thinks they're master, you may have to change that. Like if you wanted to say, let's update based on the contents of something, you're going to have to update based on the contents of main instead of master. In a lot of cases, there's no, I haven't had anybody complain. In a lot of the cases of these repos, there aren't very many PRs that are open anyway. And I haven't had anybody say afterwards they had a problem. I think when we get to the node repo, like some of the bigger ones, then we're going to have to be more careful.
Okay.
Any other questions, comments on that before we move on? If not, okay, let's go to the next issue, which is migration of core modules to primordials 30697. I'm trying to remember who put this on the agenda.
Yeah, so I think it was me.
Okay.
My internet is not very good, so I might disconnect at some time.
Sure.
Hope it's gonna be okay. So I've opened a PR. I've put the link in the chat if you want to check it out. So yeah, at this point it just needs some reviews. So it's a PR to add guidelines for contributors and PR reviewers who wants to know better about primordials, why we have them, how to use them, etc. So if you want to have a look and yeah, find any typos I've made or yeah, please go ahead.
Okay, great. Thanks for doing that.
We've spoken about that before in a TSC meeting as well, that there were multiple performance issues with using primordials, and we should definitely have a look at that again before switching more things. We have to be very careful about those, and it also definitely increases the difficulty into maintain Node.js and to get new contributors. So there are...
Yes, that's what my document is trying to address. Sorry to interrupt. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, so there are definitely a lot of concerns as well about doing this, and if it is actually the right way to use primordials as we did so far, because in the end there is likely almost no module out there that would do something similar, and there is actually no module that could do something similar. So if you write something without always being very careful, it would not be possible to really have any application to work without like other applications in Node, even if they are based on Node and Node.js itself uses fully primordials, they will still break 99% of the time or more because of modules that they would use. So the question is, whom do we actually benefit in most cases by switching our code to primordials?
For those that haven't been involved with this primordial thing from the beginning, what is the root motivation for this? Like, was there a case where there were problems and we needed to solve them?
So I know there are some part of the code in which it's important to not run any user code. So on top of my head, there's the worker termination path. So if we had any, if we rely on user mutable methods, we could have a worker that refused to die. Basically, if the main thread terminated, it could.
It's out of the question. It's out of the question. There would be a lot of ways to break Node.js by monkey patching and basic functionalities. That will definitely happen. But the point is, it will also happen with any other module. As like, even if Node.js itself would 100% use primordials, and you use just any npm package out there, it would still break because that package would break, and they don't have access to the primordials as we do. So it won't actually benefit like pretty much any program out there. even if we have 100% primordials.
Yeah, but that's just how JavaScript works, right?
Or maybe the bugs will not come to us though, right? Because application users, they will say, oh well, gee, I traced it and all of a sudden, you know, I traced it to like lib internal something something, right? And then they'll file a bug against node.js, but really it's because somebody monkey patched lib internal something something. So would this be a defense against issues reaching our repo and maybe stopping where they should be stopping, which is the frameworks repo?
But what is a good investment of energy here? Getting those issues and, you know, sort of replying to them, or putting energy into getting these primordial things working? Like,
Because with
we
the
have
primordial,
we have a fixed amount of developer hours, right?
But I think that's the open source thing that factors in here, is that the people who are pushing and are interested in doing the work won't necessarily do something else. So I guess that only applies to a portion of the work, right? Like the side effects of having done it. Right, like there are people who are actively supporting and pushing for this work, and it's you know, they're not necessarily going to go and do something else in the list of what we'd want it to do, right? So like, I don't think you can do a straight, hey, the energy that goes into this is wasted, because they're not necessarily going to trade it.
No, that's not what I'm saying, but still, you know, people that are not pushing this are putting their energy into sorting things out that are side effects from it.
Right, yeah, so that I agree on the side effect thing, just it's not the
and
whole...
we also have to remember the, you know, it's harder to contribute to Node.js and maintain it, etc., etc. There are indirect factors as well to take into account that also cost, you know, developer hours per se.
And it's really difficult for me to grasp whom we benefit by doing that. Like Gabriel, as you said, there could theoretically be issues reported towards Node.js instead of a module that would monkey patch basic object or something like that. Well, that is very unfrequently happening as far as I can tell. At least I cannot remember pretty much any issue that we would have related to that. But I have, like, even the code reviews for primordials have taken a lot of time. You have to deal with all of that code. Then we have to revert it. We have to benchmark things, and because we found issues there, it's difficult to read the code frequently with all the primordials. So whom do we actually really benefit by doing that?
So do you mean for primordials in general, or just the PR I've opened documenting them?
This is actually a general question.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think like for, you know, I don't know if Robert and Ruben, you were in the last time we discussed this, but like there was a discussion on primordials in one of the earlier meetings. Nobody was like willing to say we should block them, like block this work and just stop it. And so the thing that we thought, you know, the people who were there said, well, the one thing we can do is to try and provide some guidance that will help minimize the impact it has on other stuff. So that's where this PR comes in. I think if we want to have should we just stop primordials, like maybe that needs to be an issue somewhere, or because I don't think, like, we're probably going to end up with some subset of the TSC in each meeting. And so the people who will be able to answer your question, like, well, why are we doing this? And they obviously aren't here to advocate for it, right? So I don't know if opening that issue that just says is, you know, I think, you know, if somebody wants to say, I think this primordial stuff is causing us more pain than gain.
But how could we know that? Because I mean, Robert said that maybe we're wasting some time with that, and Well, in my experience, I actually become involved with Node.js thanks to modules in a big part, and I'm here today. So I don't know. I think it's hard to tell. Also at the GSC, we should give the direction where we want the Node.js project to go, but I'm not sure it's true. Or I mean, it's hard to tell if we gaining more or less with that. The idea with having modules is Node.js is written in JavaScript, or big chunks of it are written in JavaScript, but that's just an implementation detail. And if a user is changing the prototype methods or whatever, it should not make Node.js throw. So I've pasted an example of a user issue. So what they're doing, they are trying to trace where their code is using function prototype.bind. So to understand how the application work, I don't know, for tinkering basically. And it doesn't work because Node.js relies on it. And yes, I think that's what it's benefiting. It's when user want to do something weird with JavaScript without being blocked by how, it's just an implementation detail that we are using JS.
But this issue, for example, how does the primordials help? Yes, they can do it, but then we're gonna get an issue asking us, why can't I do this, or how do I do this instead? So we're still gonna get an issue about it. So this issue here that they're trying to rewrite bind so they can console log something. Now, if we do it with primordials, of course they can't do that, but then we're gonna get an issue. I would like to do this. Why doesn't it work?
Okay, so
because that's how JavaScript works.
So for people who, it's issue 32361. So they are trying to redefine function prototype bind, and they calling console.log inside. The issue is that console.log is using .bind in the code path. So it's an infinite loop because we are not using pre-modules actually.
The question is, do any other program still work when doing that? And the answer should very likely be no. And that's the point, you would break pretty much any code running out there. Of course, we are running JavaScript, and you are able to mutate JavaScript code at runtime. And that's something very, it's just a language. It's the nature of the language, and if we only change like a small part. Node.js itself is only the basis, the foundation for running a lot more code. Like there's a huge amount of code normally in node modules, and Node.js is just a part of it, and you would still break all the rest of the code.
I disagree. For Chrome DevTool, for example, you can do exactly that, and everything still works.
This is just the REPL, pretty much, and that's something very specific.
So should we maybe just write an issue here and then try to list the pros and cons?
Yeah, because I think it's separate from this particular PR. Like I think this PR is like useful,
good,
regardless. Like unless we come to the point where we say we're just not doing them at all, it's useful to have some guardrails or help, right? But I think as Robert's suggesting, we should open a separate issue to have that other discussion of like, okay, if somebody's going to propose, we just stop, right?
I think there's a lot of discussion left to be done.
Yeah,
I think it's too big to take it here now.
Yeah, I'd agree. So that's where like Ruben or Robert, if one of you wanted to open up that discussion, I think that's the right way to move that forward. This particular PR, I think should, at least in my personal opinion, is still a good thing to do no matter where we end up, unless, and if we end up sooner than later on something, then maybe it's less, it's we won't need it for as long, but it seems like today we do need it. So. Okay, so I think the ask there was like for people to, take a look at the PR, make specific comments, suggestions, or if there's things you think are wrong or whatever, but so looking for more reviews. Any more discussion before we move on from that one? No? Okay, well, the last issue on our agenda is potential stagnation of open issues on the H1 bounty program. So that, a blog post went out earlier this week, sort of to people who had open issues, what's going to happen. And, effectively those issues should be bulk closed on the ecosystem. HackerOne, it may have happened. I haven't managed to check in, but so basically this will be closed out very soon is the last update. With that, we do have some private business, so I'm going to suggest we skip the strategic initiative updates. Is there any other things we should talk about before we move into the private section?